Listeners everywhere, welcome to the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan, the weekly fix for your screen addiction and a trusted source for discussion of all things film and television. Please keep in mind that for the purposes of this podcast, Joel and Ryan are not acting as journalists, but rather fellow moving picture enthusiasts. All of their opinions should be taken as such. Also, please be warned that while Joel and Ryan may seem like petulant children, they are, in fact, adults who may occasionally use adult language. While they promise to bleep out all the worst words, it's a good bet you will still understand what they were saying. And now, with no further ado, here's Joel and Ryan.
Everybody! Hello!
Hey, everybody.
Hello! Welcome to the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan. I am Joel.
And I'm Ryan.
That's right. And we're happy to be with you. I'm
Definitely.
manufacturing energy.
Woo!
No, thank you all so much for joining us for another week. I think we have a really wonderful show. And so we should just get right to it because we have, as promised, back again, our first repeat visitor to the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan, our really good friend from LA, Michael Klug!
Well, gracious.
Coming in from LA. His
Coming in
place
from
of
LA.
origin is Lead Deadwood.
He's from the gold mining town. He's from this.
That's right.
The old
Although
West.
not anymore. Did you know that the mine closed down, and it's
Oh, boy.
actually a dark matter laboratory now? I don't know if you knew that.
Okay. No, I did not know that.
So,
But can you still gamble there?
Yes, you can.
Okay, well, good.
Yes.
That is, of
What else
course,
do you need?
what's most important.
Hi guys.
Hey,
How are you today?
I'm grand. I'm so glad that I'm back by popular demand.
Well, good. Yeah.
Right.
Well, yes. The public outcry. More Michael.
I need to feed these things to myself, otherwise, what have I got?
We need all
Yeah.
Michael all the time. So yes, as we teased on a couple shows ago, we had said we're going to do a show where we were going to break down the top Jaws movies of all time, and we are going to do that. A magical top 5 Jaws
top
movies.
5 Jaws movies.
Yes.
Yes. Whether you wanted them or not, you're going to get them.
It was tough. It was hard for me. I had to do a lot of digging to figure out what order I wanted to put the Jaws movies in.
Sure. We are going to not do, well, we're going to do what is a traditional countdown format for the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan. We do
We're
usually
going to do
start,
the opposite. It's not really a countdown.
yeah, it's
It
kind
is
of a
kind of a countdown.
It's
Down in
kind of-
order.
down in order, but we're going to start with the
Number one.
the top,
Which we don't normally do. Normally you save one for last. It's the big headline or gig. You don't want to have to follow number 1. But I think in this case, for
yeah.
Independence Day, we'll make an exception and start out with the awesomest one first.
Point of order.
Yes.
Mhm.
One is not my top choice.
For best Jaws movie?
I mean, it is, but
And
what
perhaps you are
Yeah,
not the
you know,
right person
We
to have on the show.
yes. Then it was great to see you again. Well, yeah. I mean, there'll be contention, and we certainly
A little bit.
If we
I
get,
think
you know,
there's a
as we move
conventional
forward.
wisdom to these, but there's different preferences here and there.
I think once you get down to the number 3 and 4, as far as where you're putting them,
Mhm.
Yeah.
what's in your 3 and 4 spot, I think that's where it's going to differ
Oh
greatly.
yeah.
And
We'll
that's
see about that.
and that is the purpose of the show, to have spirited debate. it is why people tune in, is to listen to the debate format that we're so famous for here at the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan.
We'll be counting them down in sanctioned Movie Show with Joel and Ryan order, and if our guest host has any issues he wants to bring up with those,
Sure.
you will definitely get that opportunity.
All right.
Now, a little program note. I did completely forget to check with Ryan to make sure that I did know that his. I realized when I was doing my notes together, I just put them all chronologically. So if I
Spoiler alert for the whole rest of the show. What are you doing? Yeah, chronologically.
Well, yeah, to talk. Yes, but if that is not the order that I realize I didn't check with you to confirm that if that was the order you put them in,
You need to check with me. That was we're on the same page.
All right, great. Well,
and the audience too now has absolutely no reason to even pretend to be in suspense because they know what's coming as well.
Well, at least from our perspective.
I'll be the wild card then.
Yeah.
And we already know that's going to happen too. Maybe we should just come back next week. What's that weird movie with the twins in it with like Bette Midler and that you like so much? We should talk about that instead.
Yay!
Deep dive. Get the deep dive sounder ready for deep dive into big business.
Big Business is good stuff. Pod people. Roger Ebert hated Big Business. He's so frustrated by it because he's like, this is a movie about the excitement of something that might happen that like almost never happens. Just keeps not happening. The movie just keeps not starting was basically his point. But right, there's suspense in that, isn't there?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think so. Anyway,
it's like the whole first 2/3 of the movie are the day before Christmas. That doesn't sound bad to me.
No.
So me and Roger don't agree on Big Business. I'm more with Michael on that one.
Two roads diverged in a wood.
We should probably start a countdown, right?
And Big Business was at the apex.
That's the #1 Jaws movie.
Yes, Big Business is the #1 Jaws.
Everyone check it out.
All right, let's hit the countdown.
10 seconds. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Thanks, Mother. Wow. Thank you, random redneck, for the countdown.
All right, so let's just start off. #1 Jaws movie of all time is, of course, 1975's Jaws.
Yes.
We're all in accord on that, at least.
Yes.
Yeah.
So let's talk. I mean, it really is one of the. It is as Ryan teased a couple weeks ago. It was the first big summer blockbuster movie. The behind the scenes stuff of the making of Jaws is legendary. It's almost as legendary as the film. But it works. It is such a wonderful, amazing, funny, scary, just great movie.
We'll talk about it each moment as we go through it. But the greatest thing about Jaws is just how ambitious it is from a visual storytelling standpoint. It's really, I think, it owes a lot to Hitchcock, but it's as good, if not better, than any Hitchcock movie. Maybe with a couple exceptions, because it did come later. There's a modern storytelling sense to it that it has that keeps it chugging along, but every scene has something that he's trying from a film craft standpoint that's unique and interesting and well thought through, and you just don't see that these days at all. But that's one of the great things about 70s cinema, and Jaws has both. It's this exciting thriller for everybody, for audiences of all ages, all stripes, but it also has this really ambitious way that it uses the camera and uses editing and even uses music. That's on the cutting edge for a very exciting time in art films as well. It's both.
Yeah.
So it's not perfect, but it's a near perfect Hollywood movie. It's really, even the stuff that's wrong with it is kind of unimpeachably a part of the experience that you wouldn't trade it for anything, basically.
Let's see. Based on the book by Peter Benchley.
He also he did the screenplay as well, right?
Yes, he did
his own adaptation. Yeah.
Well, he did a screenplay that they purchased, but then they rewrote several times. Howard Sackler rewrote it. John Milius rewrote it. Spielberg himself rewrote it.
Cool.
Carl Gottlieb.
Carl Gottlieb is credited with Peter Benchley on the screenplay, but yeah, a lot of people.
But the writer who mostly did the screenplay is Howard Sackler, and he was a Tony Award-winning. It did Great White Hope win the Pulitzer even? Like, he's a really special playwright, and he didn't want to be associated with a dumb monster movie.
Right.
We'll get to the sequel in a second. He's credited as the screenwriter on that. So once it became the biggest movie in the world, of course, he was happy to have his name associated with it.
Sure.
But they were all instrumental in their own way. But when you watch any of the retrospective documentaries on it, everyone agrees, the producer, the director, that Sackler broke the script and made the thing kind of what it is. And Milius and Gottlieb just did touch-ups. Gottlieb, though, he was on set. He played that, I don't know, that guy's job, the newspaper guy for that small town newspaper in the film. And he was constantly, based on what their needs were, rewriting as they went along.
Have you guys read the source material?
Yeah.
I have not, no.
It's I've read it multiple times in my life, and I actually think the latest was maybe a year ago. I picked it up again. Yeah. It doesn't hold up particularly well, because there is that whole subplot that they excised from the film, that Hooper and Mrs. Brody had a thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Boring.
Right. I mean, they excised it. That's not part of the plot. It doesn't even happen. Although there is stuff kind of hovering over it. Like, it's, you know what I mean? The relationships still kind of exist the same way. Yeah. So read the book, you're not totally getting cheated out of that. And yeah, it is boring. And it hit the stuff with the mob and a whole, Benchley, when he writes, he has and it started with Jaws, which was his first book. He writes the sense of place and the sense of history of a place is really, really important to him. And most of that's been gutted as well. They all agreed to that when they bought the rights to it. They're like, we just lean and mean, just man versus shark. That's what we want this to be. And I mean, that's, for a film, that's totally the right decision.
Sure.
Carl Gottlieb, like I was about to say, he famously joked that he himself wrote his part out of the script, essentially. It wasn't a big part to begin with, and he just kept getting rid of it as he drafted through as they went, because it was the most boring, dumbest stuff in the script. So he's barely in the movie now. But
well, let's start it at the very beginning.
Peter Benchley's in the movie almost as much as Gottlieb is.
The reporter, yeah,
right.
Let's start with the very opening image that we see, where we are in shark POV, going along the ocean floor, and we hear
shark theme.
John Williams' amazing shark theme.
Yep.
That shark theme, I can't speak to the sequels, I'm not sure, but they, as a rule, it's likely for the second sequel because Williams did the music for that too. But Spielberg and Williams had a rule that you would not hear that theme unless a shark was present.
Yep.
So that there'd be no false scares having to do with the music anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You wouldn't bump, and then
a cat jumps out.
Just a dolphin or something. Yeah,
just a dolphin.
Exactly.
Swimming cat.
In that way, they would play fair with the audience. So
yeah.
And I think that's a good idea.
Agreed.
Well, that's driving around. All right, so we're going along the ocean floor, and then we get to we cut to a bonfire and those crazy kids.
Yeah.
And love is in the air. We are in the spring in a lovely, well, it's Amity Island, which is, you know, essentially
Martha's Vineyard in real
Martha's
life.
Vineyard. And a couple sneaks off and they go out to skinny dip, and the guy essentially passes out.
Yeah.
Because he's inebriated, and then the young lady is enjoying a cool dip in the ocean, but yet she is not alone. I like this, but in my beat sheet here, the during the jaunt, the young woman goes missing. That's
That's a nice, polite way to put it.
It's a very polite way to
It's an amazing sequence. His opening just around the campfire is really, really well shot and kind of amazing. On old TV versions, it's hard to fully appreciate kind of how poetic and awesome and moody the opening is.
Mm-hmm.
I think the horror in any format sort of plays great, but the whole setup is very elegant, and when you first see the water and the moonlight on the reflecting off the surface and stuff,
mm-hmm.
and the fact how he shows her whole swim from water level, keeps the camera just floating on the
mm-hmm.
surface.
Mm-hmm.
That's genius, because you feel like you're right in there with her.
I don't think there's other than perhaps scenes out of The Exorcist, but it's hard for me to find something. I know this is an overused term, but primal, that continues to this day after 45 years of, well, not that long. I saw it when I was obviously older, but the fact that that scene still is, like we talked about a couple weeks ago, is still so upsetting. It's
mm-hmm.
just,
it's a harsh thing to see a person with complex emotions and, you know what I mean, at the mercy of suddenly not being top of the food chain. The heartlessness of that, the animalness of it is
mm-hmm.
just horrific. And of course the underwater rig that they hooked up, that she's attached to, and her performance,
yep,
all of it is stunning. But it really, to me, it's that just another fish in the sea to this thing. It's that disconnect mm-hmm. between us and the animal kingdom that is horrifying and at the heart of the whole thing. And that whole scene sets it up brilliantly.
Yeah, and from a storytelling point, the fact that there's no, and a performance standpoint, the fact that there's no screaming. It's, she's sitting there swimming, she gets chomped, and then the performance, those performance beats of she gets chomped, and then it's that what just happened, and then they get pulled again, and she has that it's like she's goes into full shock, and then there's some screaming as she's
but even then, I know what you're saying when you mm-hmm. say she's screaming the whole time, but she's not. She's saying stuff.
Yeah, it's
the heartbreaking thing about it is when she gets a hold of the buoy and she's like, doesn't she say you're okay? You're okay?
Yeah, the whole thing is. And that's what I'm talking about, like a human with complex emotions.
Exactly.
That's demonstrated there.
That's why it hurts so bad, because
I agree.
We don't know who she is, but she's, like you said,
mm-hmm.
she's a human being, and she's real.
Yeah, we don't.
You're forced to empathize with her situation, and it is horrible.
And to do that with so little, to just jump right in and hit you with that, is really.
We said it 2 weeks ago. It sets up the whole thing. It's the horror moment that makes all the other pretty much non-horror moments for the rest of the movie feel horrific, because you've been through this one thing, and it's enough. It's frankly enough for a whole series of movies.
It is, but it's also the fact that when they if they start you off with this, regardless that it gets a little bit lighter, and we see the relationship of the Brodies and all this, I think there's a constant, you're on edge, because this is where we started. I'm assuming it's going to come back to something like this, but you never know when, and that's what's just unnerving.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so the next day we meet Sheriff Brody. We meet our hero, Roy Scheider.
A New Yorker, recently moved out to the fishing islands of the North Atlantic.
and
to take us on a slower pace of life with his family.
Yep. She's like, his wife is like, tell him to be, she tells him to be careful. And he's like, in this town? Yeah. It's like, yeah. And
the holdover from their days and with him as a Manhattan cop.
Yep. So they, the word is girl's missing. They go to where she was missing. The body is discovered, washed up on the shore. We don't actually ever see the body, of course.
So you see like an arm tipped over, kind of.
We just see, but we mostly just see the reaction.
But you're right. It's not a graphic thing. We see them see the body, and that's how we get the full sort of reaction from it.
And that's when, and Brody's not dumb. He's not naive. He goes back and he's filling
Jeffrey
out.
Kramer finds her. He's blowing the whistle, and then he blows himself out. Falls down to his knees. It's really well done. I mean, it's a little heavy-handed, but it's really very well done. Even the smart-ass kid is like, ugh. He's like, he's been talking, jammering on, and he just shuts up after that.
Yeah.
So, being a good cop, Brody's like, well, he fills out the report, types in shark attack right there on the form, under cause of death. And he's gonna, he's a man of action and a man of the law. So he's going to start shutting everything down.
Yep.
Enter Murray Hamilton.
Yeah.
As Mayor Vaughn.
Oh God.
And just one of the great sleazeball roles.
Yeah, he's fantastic.
He was tailor-made. His talents were tailor-made for that role. No one could have played that role better.
I
don't think so. And it's kismet because his that's not really the kind of roles he usually gets, but he plays a very smarmy guy in The Graduate, obviously, most famously. And this is like the public relations version of that guy, and it almost makes it worse, which is what's so great about it.
To me, I sort of
anchors on his jacket.
That's what I was gonna say. I feel like when he was like thinking about the character, probably read the book, read the script, blah blah blah, goes to his fitting, and they hold up the coat, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I got it. Yeah, I got it."
Sure.
I'm
that guy.
The coat's doing a lot of heavy lifting.
Oh, for sure.
It's a really great performance. Really, really fun. Because we all know what it is. We all know the threat is real. We've all experienced it. So
but that's what I love about, just to bring it up, when they're out on the ferry, after he's like, you're going to close the beaches on your own. And I love the coroner's performance. The guy that, I don't know the actor's name, but the guy,
I don't either.
But he kind of says, he's got his arms crossed. He's like, maybe a boating accident, It's like every little supporting smarmy role is just so well done. And it's, it's just a perfect.
And Dreyfus is no boat accident. It lands on his face. You can see it, even though he's that coroner guy is virtually an expressionless guy. That's the great nature of it.
Yep.
So maybe it's in the editing or a little bit in the performance or whatever, but it lands. It's a guilty moment.
Maybe a boat accident.
Yes, and it's that. It's great to reemphasize that Brody is an outsider, because they're like, if you close the beaches, we're done, we're dead, we can't do it.
We're a summer town, we need summer dollars.
And so the coroner is the coroner, and all the other business people and everybody else that's there back in the mayor, they're all like, we need, clearly it's a risk that they're willing to take, to open up the beaches to potentially something dangerous if people were to gather there. I don't know if you guys caught any correlation to maybe a situation that we might be going through right now.
Well, it's not subtle, because there are Mayor Vaughn memes everywhere.
That's true.
Everywhere. I always said, without skipping ahead too far into the movie, but I always said those aren't really fair, because Mayor Vaughn, even though he gets there the hard way, really does learn his lesson. He has his moment of truth that hits him like a ton of bricks eventually.
Yes, but I'm not going to jump ahead to the sequel, but lesson not learned. Anyway, moving on.
Totally learned.
We'll
get there.
Not in the sequel.
Sure.
So convinced that that overruled, I guess we'll say, Mayor Vaughn overruling him, and the beaches are still open.
Open for business.
Open for business. Amity is open. Come one, come all. Enjoy.
The feeding grounds are open for business.
And by the way, am I at the right spot that when the ferry comes in, that music cue is so amazing?
Yeah. The whole ferry scene is done in one shot. It's one shot. It's a mounted camera on the end of the ferry, and the ferry does this circle in the harbor while they do that whole scene.
No, I'm saying when the vacationers come in. Are we at that point talking about opening? Oh, no, not yet.
No, not quite yet, because everything has to so he's everyone's playing in the water completely unaware, so they don't know. No one knows anything yet.
Before the 4th of July comes, we go shark hunting.
Yep, and we get the Kittner boy,
and this scene, as good as the opening is, this scene is actually, I think, for my money, the most brilliant filmmaking in the thing. The way we do these snap zooms into Brody's expressions back and forth as the bodies cross in front of him, the amount of perspective that we have, the way all the dog playing fetch, the way everything's set up so economically.
Bad Hat Harry. Yeah, I mean,
Bad Hat Harry. Yeah. The guy bugging him about the parking issues
old guy
or whatever.
With the boobs.
Old guy with the moobs.
Yeah, the moobs. Yeah.
And and just it's that just move, come on, just move, guy, and the whole thing, and then after the shark gets the Kittner boy, the reaction,
and that happens in a flash. It shot all kinds of stuff. We were talking about that. And that happens in a flash, and that's the way it should happen, because it feels like you witnessed it. And just
not
PG ratings and all that aside. You feel like what did I just see?
And you get, hey, what?
It's horrible, but I don't really know what it is, and that's what it's like when you kind of see something out of the corner of your eye.
Well, I think the extra bonus of just this is grotesque is when the other kids start seeing the blood in the water.
Yeah,
the reaction is just
it's horrific.
Man.
Well, the kid who gets chomped by the shark, his whole body just is out of his control. Like that sense of you're at the mercy of this element that's been introduced into our lives that we can't cope with. It's so visually articulated so well. It blows
not
my
timely
mind.
At all.
No. Okay. So obviously, shark. Everybody knows now.
Yeah.
Even the mayor. The mayor's like,
Yeah, the shark gets him, and then it gets that other guy in the estuary when Brody's kid is out on his sailboat.
That's later though. That's after the beaches have completely reopened. Like,
is it? It is.
Yeah, it's right before the climax. Yeah, or the
4th of July.
Yeah,
that's right. That's the fake shark, real shark.
Yeah. So now so this is, we're getting Hooper's about to arrive here. So Hooper. So they put a bounty out on the shark.
Yep.
So now we have every Tom, Dick, and Johnny coming to Amity to try to catch this shark and have it, and we meet Brody as other fishermen are celebrating catching a tiger shark.
Yeah.
And they're like, we got him. We got the shark.
We meet Hooper as they're going out.
Yeah.
To see, he's trying to help them.
Yeah. And and of course
it's a neat moment. That whole moment on the docks, just the chaos and madness of it is, and the stupidity of it is really fun, and because it's comical. The great moment where Brody's pounding on the little the dock door, and his deputy waves at him like, hey!
Yeah, he throws the nuts at the window. Yeah, to get his attention.
He's like, I'm telling. Yeah, it's really funny.
And
it's a team up. Like, you really do feel like somebody with some sense and knowledge has come to save the day. But Hooper is
there's definitely that level of comfort.
Yeah. he's a great presence, and Richard Dreyfuss does not come off like the Hooper of the book really at all. But I mean, he plays that same role. His history, all that is the same, but Dreyfuss just is cast against type sort of as this smooth talking, rich, humorous guy.
Yeah.
He's a lot of those things, but Dreyfuss, to his credit, he keeps it within himself, and it's, Spielberg was asked by the studio, he was asked by Richard Zanuck and David Brown, who do you want to cast in this? And he's like, Paul Newman, Robert Redford, and Steve McQueen. Because in 1975, that's the cast you'd want for any movie. Yeah. But it's actually well cast. Newman as Brody and Redford as Hooper and McQueen as Quint.
McQueen is an ideal Quint. Not that,
you know what I'm saying? So it's
top, but yeah.
But in the end, what we got was almost better because it's less. There's just, you take away 40% of the rock star movie star cred, and you end up with a much more believable group of people, I guess. Is maybe
there's no celebrity baggage.
Right. They're all, Dreyfuss and Shaw, all of these guys have carried movies before. They're not,
But they weren't particularly household. I mean,
they're Hollywood leading men, all of them, even at that point. But not on that, again, not quite movie star glamour level as those other three cats.
Yeah.
So in a way, it's better. It's almost better. I think it really is probably better casting. It's hard to imagine it with anybody else, even though those three guys that he stated, sounds pretty good.
Yeah,
and Hooper reads like Robert Redford and not so much Richard Dreyfuss. And Dreyfuss finds exactly where that is, where he can be a little of one thing and still a little of the other. And it makes him a more well-rounded, interesting guy, I think. Mm-hmm. Especially late in the movie when there are no lines and he's just got to sell the reality of the situation. And he still is able to do it with the wit that Dreyfuss has, that sort of incredulity about stuff. It's very fun. So
let's talk about the moment with Mrs. Kittner coming to the docks. And confronting not the mayor, confronting not anybody, but confronting Chief Brody, saying you knew there was a shark.
Walks right up to him.
That actress just passed away, I want to say like 4 or 5 months ago. I can't think of her name offhand, but apparently she would go to some conventions, or when she would meet people, one of the things that they would ask her to do is to slap them.
Slap them in the face.
Uh-huh.
It's one of the best slaps in cinema history. They cut to Dreyfuss, his reaction to it, which is great. It's this,
and it's always been as someone who has I have a big, I react incredibly strongly to stories where like the wrongly accused, or someone who says something or does something and it's so horribly misunderstood. I get such a visceral reaction to this day watching that scene, because it's like blame the mayor, blame these other guys.
Yeah, but the most important part about that scene, well, first of all, it humanizes a victim that we barely knew.
Yeah.
It brings it all back into our reality in a way we can relate to our family, so that is, and not taking the eye off that ball is really important. The other thing is that Brody, I get what you're saying, but he would disagree with you. He thinks he deserved that and that this is all on him.
Yeah, but I think it's worth noting that Vaughn says, "I'm sorry, Martin, she's wrong."
She's wrong.
But he doesn't ever step in to say, Miss Kittner, it was my, that's what, I mean, it's a telling moment for.
Right. Well, and Brody says, no, she wasn't.
Blame.
No, she
right.
wasn't.
Yeah. And it's, because again, when we look to our safety, we don't look to the mayor. We look to the chief of police, or, or we're supposed to, but, so yeah, I mean, it rationally, it makes sense, but it's that irrational response to, it's like, the chief wanted, but again, I mean, but Brody and
It's
Scheider
great. And
wonderfully
his getting
internalizes
drunk
that.
that night at his house, and that whole scene with his
Mhm.
son plays
Yeah.
great. And
I don't want to jump ahead because one of my favorite line deliveries is right in the tiger shark scene. It's that fisherman. I don't know which one it is, and Hooper says it's a tiger shark, and the guy's like, "Oh, what?"
Oh,
Like the
what?
best delivery in the
Yeah.
whole film. Anyway,
what?
oh,
Those
what?
guys, yeah, well, those guys.
It's
I mean,
fantastic.
I mean, if you were to shoot this film nowadays, those would be like bros. Those would
Yeah.
be like, you know, they were a big deal in high school, but now they're all, you know, in their 40s and 50s, but they're bros.
Yeah.
And they're just broing out of the fact that they caught this shark and they're heroes. And, you know, and they have no idea what they've done. They just, you know, and so, yeah. And so it's like, well, it's a tiger. It's a tiger shark. A what?
Yeah, and Murray and they're like, well, we're not really going to be sure until we cut the shark open and see what. And he's like, Murray Hamilton's
Half-assed autopsy on a fish.
half-assed autopsy on a fish. Not going to have that
That
Kittner boy spill out all over the dock.
Oh yeah,
It's you know,
which is great. So then,
Great
so then later on, we're back at we're at Brody's house, and Hooper shows up, and they're drinking, they're getting to know each other, and because they both know that the truth of the matter is, they need to go and perform a half-ass autopsy.
which they do. That was my
do.
favorite part when I was a kid. The license plate and the
But this is the best part about this film, and I don't think I got this until later in life, but the best misdirection, or I guess you could call it, of Spielberg in directing this is when he said, "This isn't our fish." They open it up, they find the Louisiana plate, all that crap, and then Hooper turns to him and says, "But the problem is we still have a shark out there with a bite radius this large." But he turns to deliver that to Brody, so we as an audience don't know how big he's showing as a mouth.
yeah.
I think that is the best thing, and one of the best things in the
Wherever
film.
they decided to do that,
It's this big, but he's going this way, so we don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's brilliant. Misdirection. Yeah. Or anticipation, I guess, is a better word.
or we don't know what coverage they shot. So if that was a decision made in the editing or
Sure.
whatever they decided, it's
It's
clever.
so smart.
And
yeah.
it's smart because who knows, at the time
Yeah.
they were shooting that, they might not have known what the bite radius was going to end up being.
Right.
For sure.
And,
you
you
know,
know-
it's neat. Because we're looking, trying to figure it out. Anything that makes us sit forward in our chair, even if it's a little thing, is a great thing. So
And
let's cruise through the middle bits of this. The when he goes out on Dreyfus's yacht.
So they go out there. He goes down in some scuba gear to look for stuff. We get the great kind of cheap classic scare of the
Which was the last thing filmed for that movie. That was filmed in
Spielberg's
Vera
pool.
Fields, the editor, was filmed in
Oh.
her pool out in her
Yeah, it was a
backyard.
pool. I thought it was Spielberg.
Yeah,
He didn't
and
have
so
a pool at the time.
so we get the
This is only his second feature.
Right.
he finds a tooth, finds a big great white tooth,
And I'll just say this, because there's a jump scare that comes later in the movie that Spielberg admits the face in the hole of the boat, that earlier jump scare diminished the later one. When he watched it with previews without that moment, that right before we were going to need a bigger boat, that the shark reveal.
Oh yeah.
He said that made people leap through the ceiling, and he said because he did that mean trick to them with the body. He said by that point in the movie, they didn't trust him anymore. They were ready for something to jump out at him.
Don't I recall reading or hearing that the whole Ben, what's his face, the guy in the boat, his name is Ben, I can't remember his last name, but
Ben
Gardner.
Gardner.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But I mean, wasn't that a request by the producers that there hadn't been that they wanted to add a little extra something?
I've heard Spielberg say it in his own words that was his idea, that he thought he could get another jump. And of course he did.
I don't think it diminishes you need a bigger boat. I mean, I don't.
Well, again, this is his words. He says it did. He said that jump scare was the first real jump scare in the movie and the only one. And when it was the second one and not the first one and not the only one,
Yeah.
it was not the same, even though it still worked.
Yeah.
But he had to think after he saw both versions with an audience, he had to decide to keep that earlier one or not. But he thinks you kind of have to, because you got Hooper coming to the surface in a total panic. You've got all this energy coming out of that moment that spurring us all to action.
Yeah.
He thought he needed something visceral to kick that off. And he's probably right, but he said it definitely, the later thing, while still effective, wasn't quite the same. And he theorizes it's because the audience it's like on to your style. They're a little more ready for it than they would have been otherwise.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So the autopsy isn't enough. Hooper drops the tooth, so he can't show the tooth to the mayor and the other city.
That mayor with no tooth, huh? So either you have a tooth.
You had the tooth.
You
dropped
have
it.
the tooth.
You dropped it.
Oh, no tooth. Oh,
no tooth. So that's not enough. It's not enough. They put a Coast Guard out there. They put a buoy to make sure people don't go out too far. And we all know that sharks, when you put a rope in the water to limit how far people can swim, sharks, are
they always obey those
They're
ropes.
famous
They know.
for obeying.
They're really good about that.
Floating ropes. So we get so the Coast Guard is out there. We have obviously lots of fishermen out there still trying to catch the shark.
Michael talked about the music when the ferry pulls up, when all the people come out. It's
joyous, and
that's where the movie is not timeless in a wonderful way. The movie is so mid-70s. And I mean it in the nicest sense. It's that it captures something of, because that's a happy, we're filled with dread somewhat, but it's that whole scene's not played ironically or with a wink. It's this happiness of heading to the beach.
Yeah.
For a holiday weekend. It's filmed with all the happiness and joy, unironically, of that. And that whole sequence, it's one of my favorites too, so I thought we'd point it out.
Because again, those people are arriving. This is not, there's no 24-hour news cycle. There's no internet.
Right.
Most of these people don't even know that there's a shark.
Right.
That there's a shark around there, and that.
Which must be noted that Vaughn did a great job.
It's true. So, which would explain his re-election probably in the sequel. Anyway, getting ahead of myself. I shouldn't ruin that nice, wonderful surprise that he's back. Anyway, so we have.
Plus, the way we're going, we're going to have to do the sequels in the next episode. I hope you've got some free time in your schedule, Michael, because.
Yeah, what are we going to do? All right, so.
We might have to have you back. This happens to Joel and I every time we want to talk about
every
a movie
time
series.
We
get about halfway through and we're like,
oh,
this is going to be a multi-episode deal here.
Ooh, I guess
we'll see. We'll see. Maybe not. We're not that far into it yet.
But so it's Fourth of July.
Not lost.
One of my favorite moments is Murray is the mayor going over and saying, no one's in the water. What? Go and see.
What does he care at this point? They're all on the island
spending the money. Yeah.
What does he care? It's
the optics. He wants it to be normal.
I get it, but it's just this of any of the Mayor Vaughn moments, this is the one where you're just like, come off it. I mean, to not have a sliver of doubt at that point that maybe this is a bad move.
And we get the nice false move with the kids and the fin.
And what's his city council guys like? Oh, I just put some lotion on. I don't want to go in the water.
I just put the oil.
I just put the lotion on.
Yeah.
So funny.
Gonna catch some rain. Yeah. But so we get the, essentially the boy who cried wolf moment type of thing.
Yep.
They get the shark and they find out it's kids in the fin. And so then when we hear another person, but there was like shark in the pond, and you can see it in Brody's.
No John Williams music during that whole sequence.
Well, no,
and the kids when they get caught are delightful, total kids.
This is. I want to bring this up because before I started reviewing full time, I wrote a blog. I want to say 7 years ago where I had just seen a really terrifying film, and I'm like, and it had a sequence that just stuck with me for 3 days. Like it was really upsetting. And I said, you know what? I'm going to go through horror film history and do my 21 most terrifying, unnerving moments or whatever. This sequence out of Jaws, out of all those moments, the sequence of I call him the red hair curly guy, you know, tie it fast, you know, and
Steve Grossman, he was in all of Spielberg's movies all the way through E.T. from Sugarland Express.
Wasn't he in Foul Play? Is it the same actor?
Yeah, he's
the one that gets in the beginning that she picks up as a hitchhiker. That's him?
No, that's a different guy.
All right, anyway. Well, but
my point is, this guy, he's like I always think it's fun because I always thought, well, this is the kind of actor I would be.
Yeah.
I'd have a relatively memorable, important part in somebody's first movie, and then like Bruce Campbell or something, they bring me along so I could at least show up in each of the other ones. You know what I mean? Yep. Even though I'm not a star and not bankable, I always hoped I'd get hooked up with a director. And that guy, player. he's because he's doing that great New England accent, and he's actually in real life.
Well, no, but what I was talking about
it's a very actorly thing, even though it's a very small, like you feel like it's be a stunt guy rather than
a real guy.
Right.
But the scene in that sequence, why I decided to put it in this list of the most upsetting horror movie moments, because there's something so, again, I'm going to say that word primal, but when you have that overhead shot of him on the overturned boat and you silently see the shark with the open mouth come up on him. It's not the leg in the water. It's not, it's that, and I want to say
it's the best look we get at the shark up until that point.
Oh, and but it's just so, oh my God. It's so.
That's a whole sequence that they cut.
Yeah, that
guy actually saves, is it Sean or Michael?
Sean.
Saves Sean. He grabs onto him while he's in the shark's mouth. He grabs onto him and pushes him off to safety to his friends. There's a whole deleted sequence. So it's heroic what he does, and it actually plays pretty cool, but it's gruesome, and they wanted to keep it.
They cut it because for rating, they cut it because
they wanted
to.
You guys need to post that sequence in the notes if it's available on.
It's on all the DVDs and Blu-rays and everything.
It's on all the. It's on the making stuff. Yeah, because he was.
It's not. It may not be in as a deleted scene, but it's in that 2-hour documentary that's on all of
they have the rough they're using the same, essentially the same rig that they used for the woman at the beginning when she's in the shark's mouth going through the water, but he's just like, he's all like dead faced and he's holding on to Michael and
really creepy
and then he's just like
then he kind of takes his last bit of energy to shove him off.
It's bonkers.
Maybe I don't want to see it. Let's just put it that way, because that's
anyway.
It's like I said, it's kind of probably better the way it is, but it's something else the way they conceived of it. It's a neat idea.
There is a little Williams cue in there, though. Excuse me, a little, because when he slides off the boat, isn't there a?
There's music there.
Like
there's no music when the kids are pretending to be a shark.
Yeah.
The music starts. We don't even see anything. The music tells us the shark is here.
Yep.
That's what's so brilliant about it.
The music tells us as the audience that girl yelling shark. Yeah, that girl yelling shark is telling the truth.
Well, there's also that beautiful shot of Sean, the youngest, sitting right on the beach and doing a sandcastle, and you just see the dorsal fin and the tail fin just kind of glide by.
Yep.
Yeah.
One, it shows the size, but two, it's like, you're almost thinking the thing's going to jump out of the water and grab this poor kid, obviously.
Right. Well, and there's the shark's fin view shot of zooming by Mike in the water while he's treading water.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That whole sequence is undersung. It's really, really good. It's really strong.
That's why it's in my most horrifying list, because jeepers, man.
And it's so scary. Everyone realizes, and now another person has died. It's time to step things up. It's time to hunt this thing down. And so now we get introduced to Quint.
We've kind of already been introduced to him, but we, he said, I'm not going to do this cheap, and I'm not going to take any orders from you people. And but if you want to get rid of this shark and you want to keep your businesses open, you want to, I don't remember what he says, you want to have heat during the winter or whatever.
Living on welfare all winter.
Yeah, you're going to have to pony up. and then he, then him and his sidekick sort of walk out of the room.
Oh my God! Let me just make mention of the sidekick, and I think it's just a wonderful symptom of the film as a whole. All these weird little characters, like the townspeople, the woman that has the really big accent, but then this little guy that has no lines, and it's like, this guy's a for real fisherman. They drag this guy out of.
Not only that, but you have to pay attention to catch it. But there's a whole story arc for him. That little sidekick guy, it happens off screen, but he decides, this shark is huge, I'm not going out there.
Yeah,
that's why he ends up being willing to take the other people, because his usual employee is like, screw this, you're on your own.
You're right.
And that's all, you can feel that and sense it all happening in the background, which is cool.
So they go out, they're out in the Orca.
But you got to mention, Joel, the shot from Quint's shack through the shark jaws as the boat goes out. The best thing ever. Yeah.
Well, that and her, that weird poem that makes Mrs. Brody finally break down and lose her cool.
Yep.
And the whole tie me this knot and all the just all of the manly posturing and stuff. And Shaw. We could talk about him for hours, but Robert Shaw he's not Quint at all, really, in real life, but that sort of competitive, like, bully, he has that in him in real life, and he brought that kind of to the whole project. Dreyfuss said it wasn't really, like, he's not quite a jerk like Quint, but he's every bit as competitive as him, and that competition mixed with him drinking all the time, like, just made him volatile and crazy to be around. And Dreyfuss and he, that tension between them is just really palpable and very, very real. And with all Joel and I always, Joel in particular, he champions good working conditions for movie stars and extras and performers on all levels, and this wasn't that great of working conditions.
Yeah.
But it does pay off on screen. Their desperation, their growing impatience with each other, that three-way relationship, how everything that happens on that boat is always two people against one, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And it's not generally the two people you think it's going to be against the one you think it's going to be. They flip allegiances based on each argument. All of that's so vivid and real. I adore.
I think that's what that goes back to, the 1,500 screenwriters we already mentioned, but we know all these people so well. So when the three of them get in there, and I always use the powder keg terminology because I love that in my own writing, is like, just get a bunch of these weird personalities in a place where they can't get away from each other, and it's great. If you've created your characters and given them a history and we understand them when they get in there, you can't fail.
Throw three pros into the material and into the boat together to actually perform it at it. It is magic. It's because that the whole end of the film, it's other than Joel, I'm sure it's coming to it, their bonding moments in the dark of the night. Other than that, it's formless, and it's not like it's not shot in the grand way that the earlier parts are. It's very straightforward because I think just to get the footage and just be out on the water, they just had to kind of plow through it.
Sure.
But like you say, by that point, it makes no difference. It doesn't make difference that the shark doesn't quite look right when it's out of the water, or that the real shark footage doesn't quite match the model shark footage. None of that's very important at the end of that movie, because the whole opening of the film has meticulously, with every second, has sort of earned its place.
Yep. Let's jump to, we talked about it a little bit already. Let's quick
Murray's breakdown in the hospital we skipped to. That really is great. Since we're all in the Murray Hamilton fan club.
My son was out there too.
Yeah, my son was out there. Yeah.
My kids were out there too.
Again,
as if that just makes you want to smack him more.
Yeah.
But at least he's woken up.
Yeah. Again, it's the unless it's affected you personally, you just don't care.
You're the mayor of Shark City. They think you want the beaches open.
Yeah. But
that's nice. This film has a lot of great "I told you so"s in it. I have to say,
Yeah,
that's maybe the best one.
So let's move ahead to where they're out on the water. Brody being the low man on the hierarchy.
Yeah.
See, you brought your rubbers with you.
Yeah, and so they make it. He may be the sheriff, but he's of the three of them, he knows the least, and so
he's the most scared. He's the least. He's the most out of his element. He's our hero, and it's appropriate that he be in that position.
And he's us. I mean, he's us. We would be. Yeah, we would have to be the ones chumming, throwing the chum out into the water, and we get the great. We talked about it a little bit before. We get the Bruce the shark. Coming up and snapping on the chum. No one sees him except for Chief, and we get the whole iconic.
Standing up straight,
and he backs up in there, and you're gonna need a bigger boat.
We're gonna need a bigger boat. One of the most famous movie lines of all time.
Yep.
Made up by the actor, not exactly on the spot, as legend would sometimes have you believe, but made up by the actor in any case, which is pretty great.
And and the fact that
not necessarily the same as being improvised is all I'm saying.
Right.
It's ludicrous to think he could have improvised that line in so perfect a situation as that.
Sure.
That's not what happened, but it's Scheider's line. He's credited with coming up with it.
And when when that clip is shown, it always stops after "you're going to need a bigger boat." But that kicks off this really great, cool sequence where they all spring into action, and they're they get they're tying the knots on the barrels. Quint is getting his gun. I love that.
The reaction shot of Shaw's when he says we're going to need a bigger boat, and Shaw immediately knows what he's seen and what's gone down.
Yep.
And it springs into action, like you say. That's really fun.
Yeah, and I love that Brody the entire time is like, but we're going to go in for a bigger boat, right? It's like he's like, no, I get whatever.
Even when the whole barrel sequence is wound down, he's still kind of on that. Well, we should do this.
I mean, this is what we're doing, right? And I love that. And I even love when they're that chase sequence when they're chasing after the barrels. And Williams, again,
barrels as shark is one of the most genius things the film comes up with.
Exactly.
And it all happened because the shark didn't work. And we also get it's also how you hunt sharks. So I mean, it's legit, but those barrels are everything at the end of movie.
If the shark would have worked, we would have seen a lot more shark action
we all kind of agree the movie likely would, even the filmmakers agree, the movie likely wouldn't have been better for that.
Yeah. No. But we get that great music cue. It's this joyous, energetic chase. Not chase like.
It's adventure.
Adventure. Thank you. I was couldn't come up with that. But
when they first leave the docks, that cue is called "Out to Sea." When they're out to sea, it's something different, but it's the same music basically.
Yeah,
but I want to bring that up too, Joel, because that music always, even as a kid seeing that film. There was something about it. There was obviously a reprieve in your emotions, but I never bought it. Like as a kid, I'm like, I'm supposed to feel good here. I'm supposed to, but there was still, I mean, the movie had set it up so well and everything else that even this little bit of joyous, action-y music, even as a kid, I'm like, okay.
Well, I think they know that though. I think that's why they can do it.
Yeah, Hooper.
I think that's why you can have the high adventure music and scene and still have none of the tension let out of it. Yeah, I don't think they were trying to relieve tension. I think you can. The movie's privileged enough at that point when they're doing music to have both, and so it does.
No, I don't think it was trying to manipulate me necessarily, but it felt weird to me as a child, but it didn't. It didn't fool me, I guess, is the way.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I don't think I certainly didn't at the time, but it's that, Hooper even smiles. It goes back to Ryan put it so well when we talked about this at the very beginning. It's Hooper and everybody on that boat still believes that they're on the top of the food chain, and it's like, we got him, we're gonna get him, and it's and we as an audience know, no, you don't. But you know, in that, you know, the music cue, the way it's shot, the beautiful blue sky, Hooper up on the top driving the boat, kind of enjoying the excitement of it all.
All those barrel sequences, the timing with him putting the tracking device, the strobe light on it, and how it comes down to the last second. It's all, you know, and it's all truly all that stuff is truly created in the editing. It's why it won an Oscar, I believe, for editing, rightfully so. But Spielberg never worked with Verna Fields again because he felt like she got all the credit for the movie being awesome. So his next editor was Michael Kahn, and then it's been Michael Kahn ever since.
Well, I think what's interesting about this whole everything happening at this point, character-wise, I think I also recognize this as a child, the rampant instability of Quint. Like, there was always, and the fact that it's his boat, and he's in command, even as a child, that made me uncomfortable. Like, and obviously he does sort of crack, you know, but there's this constant undertone of, we can't trust this guy. He knows his stuff, but I don't like him.
But we're not in good hands with him.
No.
And the movie, that's not an accident or kismet. The movie demonstrates that repeatedly. Yeah. Brody doesn't feel comfortable with him at all. And all the moments, the smashing of the radio is my favorite. But there are a bunch of them that just earn that every step of the way. It's great.
Well, it's like that moment in the Blair Witch Project where Mike says, "I threw the map away," when Quint is pushing the engine and it starts smoking and he just keeps pushing and he's doing this. It's like, what the hell are you doing?
Well,
what are you doing?
To you first, Spanish lady.
He's scared. He's lost it. He's scared. Well, the last thing that guy wants, and I guess this is the time to talk about it, is to be eaten by a shark. Yeah. He hates sharks, so he spends all his time around them. He really hates them. But the horror is, you know, he's escaped somehow, the way he describes it, through really pure luck.
Yeah.
Being devoured by a shark. And the idea of now that being his fate is his worst fear. And of course, it becomes self-fulfilling. He almost makes it happen, which is crazy, but it all feels believable.
Into the monologue, a really quick side note. I realized this every time I watch the film, even most recently, probably a year ago, the sequence where they think they've got the shark, Quint thinks he's got it, and they're reeling it in, and Brody's like, I can see the wire.
And Hooper's like, that's not it. You don't have it.
But this is what's so weird about this movie, and I've seen it, countless times. Every time that happens, I never ever remember what it is. Like, I get to that point, I'm watching it, I'm like, I can see the wire, and I'm like, there's something blocked. And every time I watch, I'm like, I don't know what it is. So every time I get this sense.
But that's, Michael, you don't know what it is. That's the whole point.
No, but
it's an argument, right? that we never get proof of. Quint believes he's right. Hooper still believes he's right. Quint says to him, I know one thing, is you Harvard guys can't admit when you're wrong.
Right.
Because Quint believes to the end that was the shark, and the shark snapped the line. Hooper doesn't believe it.
The shark is that they find, that's right after the shark, they find out is under the boat, right? It is the shark, right? Am I wrong?
I don't know. They don't resolve it. So you don't know.
Interesting, because I always jump ahead to...
There's one of those cuts to the horizon. Time has passed before we get back to the story.
Okay.
So you never know if it was the shark or not.
Resolved or not, every time.
The question is, do you believe Quint or Hooper? I believe Quint. He's right. The shark's... Anyway. He's learning the shark. The shark is cleverer and has some extra boogeyman nature to him that is causing him to
personal.
Yeah.
Not this time.
Anyway,
this time it's not personal.
Let's go to the Dark Knight, the Dark Knight of the Soul moment where they're hanging.
Well, and at first it's a bonding moment. They're showing each other scars. They're singing around the campfire. I mean, it's this first time you've seen them having a nice time.
But that's what's so great about it. There is this moment of comedy. They're showing their scars, and then Brody lifts up his shirt and kind of looks at this.
His appendix.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that in all of this, and it's about to get as dark as it could possibly get, but you still have these lovely little moments of realistic.
The whole movie is sequences like this. They're structured the same way. Your favorite sequence starts out with a comedy sequence. These kids with the fake fin. and the relief from finding that out, and the comedy of he told me we should do it, and all this, blame the other kid.
Yeah.
It all rings true and is hilarious, and then boom, something is happening. And this is different. It's pretty purely dramatic and no action, but it's the same. It's this loosening, jokey, fun kind of okay, followed by the hammer dropping, and that they all took a swing at that. That it's mostly John Milius that wrote the Indianapolis thing. John is a noted military kind of historian, director and writer, and he brought that into play in the story. But everybody tried to write it. Shaw himself rewrote it, and he came on set to do it, and he was having a bad day. He was drunk, and he gave this sort of lackluster reading of it and did the best he could, and it was passable, and they moved on. And the next day he sobered up and went to Spielberg and said, I know what it means to ask to do that again. It's a whole day of shooting. It's a whole everything. But I feel terrible, and I know that I can do it better for you, better for the movie. So I just want you to know, if you're willing to shoot it again, I promise I'll be there this time. And of course, that was Spielberg's like, okay, let's see what he's got. And wow, you constantly bring him up as how did you not get nominated for an Oscar for Jaws? Partly it's because 75 had so many good films and so many good performances in it, but watch that. I mean, Robert Shaw is a really, really good actor, really good physical actor, but have we ever seen him as good as that as anything?
Well, no, I did. I wrote an article when I was still working for Horror Freak News about, top 10 horror performances that were overlooked by the Academy, and that was easily on the list. I think it's hands down number one on the list. Just the one where you can say it's just, maybe he doesn't win the Oscar that year, but a nomination at least
for that scene alone. Not to mention just the rest of it.
Yeah.
That Indianapolis monologue, I just don't know what to say. It's so powerful. It's just really, I love it. I love it. It's one of the, and I tell Joel this all the time, and you remind us of this, and it's always better when you can, right? Show, don't tell. But you can always, if you've got the goods on paper, and if you've got the actor that can do it, you can always show an actor telling you a story, and it will, if it's a compelling story and a compelling actor, a person's face relating an experience can be an extremely powerful thing if you give it the time and respect that it deserves. Right. We don't do that a lot anymore.
Well, it's interesting. I saw on the festival circuit a couple of years ago.
My point.
A couple of years ago on the festival circuit, there was a short film called 20 Matches, and it's basically one actress, and she lights 20 matches. As they go out, she's telling persons of a story. It was the most mind-blowing thing I've ever seen. All it is matchlight and her telling a story.
Right. That's still powerful. You're talking about filmmakers out there, Hollywood.
If you can,
that's still a powerful thing.
Well, yeah. I mean, and the fact that the Indianapolis monologue, it so clearly, it restates the stakes for our three heroes at this point. Like, this is the reality you're facing. You could end up in the water and you have no control anymore. As long as you're on the boat, you can pretend like you have a little sense of control over the situation. But the reality is if something happens to this boat and we're just in the water, that's it. We're done.
But it also raises the stakes for the audience, because now we see that these three could potentially be not particularly friends, but they're allies now. There's something about this sharing of all of this going on, and I think that ups the stakes for us as an audience, because now we're even more rooting for them, because they could actually be buddies, you know, and now they're going to work together.
They're in the bunker. Yeah, they've had that.
They've had
that war, that first battle experience.
Yeah.
Now they're in the bunker, and the petty things that pissed them off before.
And again, even the economy of storytelling and the respect that whole sequence pays the audience.
Mm-hmm.
The moment where he shows the tattoo removed, and Hooper's like, "What's that?" and he's like, "That," and he makes a joke, and Shaw doesn't laugh at it, and he says, "That's the U.S. Indianapolis right there," and Hooper knows what the USS Indianapolis is, and Brody doesn't know. And I mean, but nobody's saying any of this stuff really, and we're all relating to it. It's just such a well done scene in every respect. I just adore it.
Well, it's interesting to me, guys. Like this sequence to me is, I'm gonna get mushy, but a sequence like this confirms to me why I like film so much. Like if something, because yes, the whole film is almost perfect, but you got a sequence that is perfect. There's nothing that could be improved upon here. And it just makes me so happy to, I guess, understand it or be moved by it. You know, it confirms to me a sequence like this that, you know, I'm in the right place. And this is why I love movies, because wow, this is just, it's unreal how good it is, you know. And it's, anyway, I'm babbling, but it's important to, you know, this is a reason why.
It could have been a little bit better. Richard Dreyfuss chose the wrong key to start singing in, and it made Robert Shaw pick the high register to try to go, you know, he's like, "Show me the way to go home." And he's like, "I'm tired and I want to go to bed." And then Robert Shaw comes in with, "I had a little drink of that."
But that's awesome. That could not be improved upon.
No, I know. I'm just like,
it's awesome.
No. You want to go down the octave. It's okay, Robert. We don't need the tenor part here. And but anyway, so let's move ahead now. So we get, you know, so they're singing this the incredible scene is, of course, you know, conventionally we would go, okay, now they're going to go to bed and we'll resume the battle in the morning.
Right,
but
that's not quite what happens.
We don't get that, you know, because the shark is
shark punches a hole in the bottom of the boat.
Yeah, and so now things are really dire. We're dire to the point where Quint has to admit two things: got to get life jackets, and Hooper.
The throwing the guys the life jackets, that happens a little bit later, of course, but that throwing the life jacket is just terrifying.
Yeah, the life jacket and
that's probably the most scared I am in the whole movie, when Quint throws Brody the life jacket. And Brody looks at it like, "What am I going to do with this?"
Yeah.
Oh, he's been wearing a life jacket off and on the whole time too, because he's not a very good swimmer. That Quint's acknowledgement that we're all going in the water, and the setup of the Indianapolis story, and everything we've seen. Oh my God.
And and also the idea of what, you know, of Quint going, my plan hasn't worked the way it was supposed to. Hooper, what do you got? Let's do the cage. It's stupid. Everything's gonna go wrong here. But this is the point we're at.
And then you get happy music again while they're assembling the cage.
The assembly music.
Like, hey, don't worry, audience. It's all going to work out.
The cage.
This is one of my favorite edits in cinema history. Is when they decide they're going to do the cage, and then they cut to Brody like he's reacting to that conversation, and the cage comes up they're already building it. That is one of the best edits ever. Like every time I see it, I just stop and
it's a fantastic transition. It's really great.
It has one of my favorite moments that translates over into life for me all the time. It's when Hooper's in there and he's like, "I have no spit."
And earlier, 20 minutes ago, earlier in the movie, he breaks down the whole thing. He's like, so you go in the cage. Cage goes in the water. Sharks in the water.
Sharks in the water.
Our shark.
Yep.
Farewell and adieu. You know.
Yeah.
So,
but that's where
we also don't believe in this cage plan at all.
Yeah, we have no reason. A big stick. Ultimately, this battle has come down to between man and a shark is a big stick.
Yeah.
And
the limitations of that have been made clear. He's like, you think that's going to penetrate his skin? He's like,
I can get him
no, but if he'll open his mouth, I can get it in the soft tissue of his mouth. Maybe.
Yeah,
maybe. You got a better idea.
And we're all like,
yeah, and that's
better ideas.
And again, that's where we're at. So we go, yeah. So we're down underneath. Of course, nothing does go well. He doesn't get the doesn't get to poke him with the stick. I know. The shark gets pinned between the cage and the boat.
Which, by the way, the footage of the actual shark getting caught in there is mind-blowing.
It's a real shark in Australia getting caught in a miniature cage, and they the footage is so good that they rewrote the sequence on it. Because that was supposed to happen with Hooper in the cage, and their actor wasn't in the cage when it happened. Thankfully, he wasn't. But they had to find a way to get him out so that they could make that all fit. And like I said, the real shark footage doesn't mesh well with the way the fake shark moves that we see more of. But it's all so great. Mm-hmm. It's all such good cinema that you don't really care that it doesn't, that it's not a.
Well, I've often asked, where are the barrels?
Yeah, right. It's the whole thing. It doesn't matter at that point. Who cares?
Yeah.
Well, no, then I'll turn to myself and shut up, you stupid idiot. Just
they have us in the palm of their hands.
Unclench
pretty much whatever they want.
The barrels, yeah.
Yeah.
Including and up to.
So now we have everything that's happened there. Our intrepid heroes are of the belief now. Richard Dreyfuss, Hooper, he's gone bye. He's
We've
dead.
seen him. He's hiding behind a rock.
We've seen him that he's hiding. Yeah, we've seen him that he's okay.
We have not seen him eaten.
Right. But our Brody and Quint they're going under the assumption, oh yeah, he got eaten. So it's now we're just down to 2.
And I don't remember them even having that conversation or that acknowledgement more that they're on the boat and they're still fighting the shark.
Well, they're still fighting the shark.
Obviously, the plan didn't work.
The plan didn't work. I think what's leading me is, jump to the very, very end. It's just literally Brody's expression at the very, very end of the movie when Richard Dreyfuss comes up. He's like, oh. It's that look of. So I'm backfilling.
But Brody probably read the book. That's why he was surprised.
Well,
exactly. But it's interesting. I remember this now that I wasn't even thinking about this until
if Hooper has an affair with Brody's wife in the movie, he can't survive till the end of the movie. Yeah. That's old-fashioned, stupid movie rules.
I agree.
It's the fact that they cut that allows for that change in the ending, which works great. So
I think, and I wrote this, I think I posted this on social media when I watched Jaws recently, which I guess was probably like last year. And I think it's one of the best lines of dialogue ever written is when he comes up, Hooper looks around and says, Quint. And all Brody says is, no. Mm-hmm. Like, as a screenwriter,
and he doesn't quite completely stop smiling, but he still says no in a very somber way. It's really nicely done.
Well, as a writer, that's gold. If I could ever in my life write 2 words like that say everything and so perfectly, I could die happy, because that's a beautiful, beautiful little thing. Because he could have said, no, he's dead, but it's all in the
he got chomped real good.
Yeah.
Or
he got bent
just
in half.
Anything though, like you say, what happened, the temptation to tell what we just saw is huge there because Hooper hasn't seen anything.
Right.
So finding the absolute minimum, which you got to say he did, it couldn't be less.
No.
That still communicates fully the experience we just experienced to Hooper is fantastic.
Exactly, but it's also neither of them have anything left physically. They're, you know, they don't have it, and you know, this is it. You know, it's a beautiful, beautiful 2 words that every time I see it, I just, you know, like I want to cheer. You know, it's so good.
Let's Tarantino back a little bit. Let's whip back a little bit in time to that moment where Quint, where the shark. The shark has behaved very shark-like throughout a lot of this, and then it's like, I gots to get me on that boat. And so we get the shark saying, enough of you, orca. I'm going to come on board.
He really chomps off the back of the boat, and the boat sort of sinks underneath him is how he gets on top of it. Mm-hmm. There's no shark leaping up onto the boat, for example, or
no,
leaping out of the water.
He leaps on it. He leaps up on it. That's what cracks the back of the boat. I don't know boat terminology, but that's
but it's not like a shark going from being in the water to being on top of a boat exactly. The whole front of his body is the end of it, bottom of his mouth cracks the back of the boat, and then he just starts chomping his way up into it while it's sinking.
And
it helps that it's sinking and that it's mostly in the water. Like I think it's a credulous moment is all I'm saying. It's not unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's crazy, but it's not unbelievable.
Quint's final moments are so wonderfully terrifying.
Yeah.
It's because it takes its time. We get to see Quint trying to fight those last desperate kicks, moments, anything to avoid the inevitable.
All of it.
Yeah. The absolute inevitability of what is about to happen.
His screaming and then his horrifying limp silence.
Yep.
Which is really the spookiest part of the whole thing, where
the little
arms flail out like Jesus on the cross, and he just goes under.
The sequence is so vicious.
But he's so animated and so fighting for life every second that when he stops moving and stops making sound suddenly, it works really, really great.
And the thing that caused him to lose his grip and fall into the shark's mouth is the compressed air thing, which I lost my microphone, which Brody is able to get a hold of and smack the shark with a little bit when the shark comes in again. And now we have, I don't know, is it Deus Ex Machina to you guys that the thing? It's
no, they set it up beautifully.
They set it up so because it's.
Benchley was highly against it because it's not possible to shoot a tank of compressed air and have it explode like that. That's not what happens. So it's not believable in that sense.
Yeah.
But Spielberg said, just wait. You'll see. You'll see why it has to be this way. Mm-hmm. Why the shark just can't drown because of the barrels. It has to be like this. And Benchley even admits, he's like, I watched it with people, and he's right. You have to have that kaboom. You have to have that moment of catharsis and justice. All the payoff in that visually and sonically. Without it, you're missing something.
Yep. And the camera,
and they have set it up
camera
the whole time. Hooper's saying, "What are you doing?" Just by dropping it on the ground, apparently it can explode.
Yeah.
Again, it can't. But in the reality of the world of our story, that's all. Yeah. Everybody's treated those canisters very seriously, so it's cool. It works.
And so and that underwater camera, as the headless bleeding shark is sinking down. With
the whale song music cue and that strange moan of the dinosaur from that old movie all slowed down.
Yep. And the one fin kind of coming through the black with blood water. It's such a tremendous. There's so many, and even before that, the Scheider's just his expression of shock and joy is so real, and so it just
his exhilaration is our exhilaration. It all happens at the same time and the same beat.
And a moment like that could be so false if not performed right, directed right, and edited right.
They again, well, we won't talk about the sequels today. We'll have to do that next week. But they try and recreate that in the following 3 films, and to sort of lessening impact each time.
Yep.
It's not that it doesn't work in any of them. It works a little in each of them, but it's not the same because it's not. Partly because we've seen it all before. That's always a challenge to a sequel. But mostly it's like you say, all of it. Everything leading up to it and everything after it. I mean, it's all done so well, and not everybody, Spielberg's special. Not everybody can do it like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. This book and this movie as a child got me really interested. I always, sometimes, well, not always, but I fantasized about becoming a marine biologist because of Jaws, because it was so fascinating to me. But the one thing that is always
you don't need to go to Brisbane when you have a great white shark right here.
Exactly. But what always bothered me, even as a child, is that there are gallons upon gallons and gallons of blood in the water. And Hooper and Brody just kicking away on the barrels. There would have been dozens, if not hundreds, of other sharks coming into the area.
No. Not with the giant alpha predator stoking out his grounds.
That's what I'm saying. It's dead. When it's dead. I am always like, I can't quite buy that they would be not kind of fighting off a couple other little looky-loos.
No.
Nope.
That is not an issue at all.
I
That's just your demented mind not allowing the horror to end.
Well, not...
They explain what a rogue shark would be like, and what a shark of that size would be like, and what it would do with in the book, they explain it. They over-explain it. In the movie, though, they even explain it. He's scoped out this territory, and it's his, and he's not ever going to leave, and nothing is going to be able to come along to compete with him.
Right, but he's dead and bleeding. And
sure, but that you're thinking like the sharks are just waiting behind a rope line under the water somewhere to come back into this area, and that's not how nature works.
All right, he's gone. Let's go.
He's gone. Yay!
But also, shark attacks are rare. They don't really attack people.
Yep.
No, but I'm saying if there is blood in the water, they're gonna go crazy, and you've heard of feeding frenzies, and they're gonna go nutso and bite anything.
But they regularly eat the bleeding shark before they would attack the swimming people.
Yes, but in their confusion. And
see, now they have to be nearby, drawn to the blood, and confused for your extra horror ending to work.
Hey, I am a marine biologist in training here.
You are the closest thing we have to Mario.
Exactly.
What you're saying isn't nutso or anything. I'm just saying it isn't apparent or self-evident that this is what would happen.
It made me question as a child the reality of that scenario. That's all.
And then you've grown into a man who also questions the reality of this.
That's right. but going to the ending, I think the shot of them coming into the shore as the credits roll, coming on the beach, is so lovely.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's, we don't...
And just enough time for us to see them get to their feet,
see them get on there. But I mean, I think it's a nice moment of, without having to actually have dialogue or an actual scene, we see that they're okay, and I think that's
We get a little Butch and Sundance jibber jabber between them as they're paddling, and then you cut to that.
Right, with that long shot from the beach,
Mm-hmm.
With just music playing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about you guys, but I kind of like that movie.
It's a pretty good movie. I think.
Josh, I'll give it a 3.5 out of 5.
Shut up.
3.5, 3 3/4.
What would you honestly, because
rounded down
maybe seeing it all these years, and we've seen it a billion times. So how would you rate it based on your knowledge now? Would you still give it a perfect 5?
It's a perfect adventure thriller. It's no question. It's
I
perfect.
sort of feel like the way
even
the
its flaws, when noticeable, are not. I wouldn't change them, and that's.
And and let's talk. I mean, real
I don't
quick.
think there's anything I would change about Jaws.
Is there any other movie that benefited from kismet of of just things going wrong that made the filmmakers, made Spielberg and the whole crew have to figure things out on the spot?
However miserable it was to make, and apparently it was very miserable. And Spielberg, to the point that he couldn't enjoy it. It took a decade plus for him to look back at Jaws and say, "Oh, I did a good job," or "Oh, I like that movie," or "Oh, I can remember this fondly." Because for him, he was on the edge of a nervous breakdown. He was physically exhausted, and he as soon as shooting left, he skipped his own wrap party to just get home faster. Yep. He had it. It was a terrible experience, but it was this huge hit and everything, and I'm sure he appreciated that. But you couldn't get him to say something nice about it for a long time. Yeah. We were into the 90s before Spielberg. You could put a mic in front of him and he'd say, Jaws was good, actually. That mechanical shark, it didn't work, but when it worked pretty good. It works. The movie works. Mm-hmm. Well, I owe that shark something. I've always hated it, and yet at the same time.
Well, it's funny to me how a lot of people, because I met Lorraine Gary when I was working in Beverly Hills. She walked into the store, and I'm like, crap, it's Mrs. Brody, and
goodness.
I ended up, I'm shameless. I asked for her autograph, and because I said Miss Gary, and of course that was her stage name. She's like, huh? She looks at me, but I talked to her just briefly, but I don't know if how can you not? I said, you're in one of the, because she kind of played it off. I'm
like it was no big deal.
The greatest films ever made, and she's like, yeah.
Well, and beyond that, and she's the wife of the head of the studio. It's nepotism. It's everything you wouldn't like.
But she's actually, that's the thing. But she's actually
brilliant
good
in
the first two.
No, she's fantastic in it.
And the second
she's great in the second one, as good as you can be.
The fourth one.
But in that first film,
say, maybe she's like, I don't like to talk about it because if we're gonna acknowledge my work in the first film, we gotta go to
my star vehicle.
Yeah,
she was probably scared you were gonna start blaming her for that movie. She's fantastic in it. She's so good in it.
Yeah. She
lamented the loss of the affair a bit, but I don't think so. I think it's good because we stay on her side, and she remains a surrogate for us thoroughly. Mm-hmm. Her radio conversation with Quint, where she's the mom calling, to see how things are going. And
well, it's his brusque. Is that the right word?
Yeah, it works.
Brusque. But he's he's like.
See you later.
Yep.
Right. We have a Mrs. Brody here. Put her on. She's not even in that scene, and we don't even hear her, and her presence and what she's going through is palpable in that scene. She's great in that movie. I mean, really good. The improv dinner scene, the goofiness, the reality of her quirky laughs at unfunny things, all of it just is wonderful. Well, she's a young wife, and at the same time she's a complaining old Jewish grandmother,
right?
All wrapped into one. Like, you can feel where she's going to be 25 years from now.
But that's what's so fun about the film is these secondary characters, which I think in this day and age, they wouldn't get that kind of care.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe not. I don't think they really do.
Like the opening scene when we see them in bed and they have their little pack the can, have it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's so quick. It's immediate. Okay, we like these people. These are cool, nice people.
All of it. Hey, don't play on those swings. I haven't fixed those yet. The whole family, familial deal.
What kind of ice cream? Coffee. It's just like it's all these tiny little things that make the film so good, because it's not going to happen in movies generally today, because we're going to go straight for the action and the horror. Right. We're not going to get the details.
Yeah. Well, and more than that, we just the inability to put a horror element in a believable world. I mean, to be fair to most horror movies, there are plenty of great ones that don't pull that off or don't try to pull that off. It's fine, but we don't pull that off. We, as audience members, we want to sit there. We want to be in that night vision audience, and we want somebody's death to make us jump, but we don't want to feel bad about it. We certainly don't want that character's mother showing up on screen and scolding us for not caring enough. Or, you know what I mean? We don't want that as an audience at all anymore. And you know, that Jaws happened in an era of cinema, and it was a pulp major, you know, commercial hit of its day. It wasn't like an art film, but it had that, we're gonna go for it. I'm gonna make all these moments special. He had we didn't talk about the ham scene, going fishing with the ham. And which is the greatest invisible shark moment in the film.
It's a roast.
It's a roast. Okay, sorry, my wife's roast. But that scene took the place of a scene that he wanted to do earlier, and to hear Spielberg talk about it is brilliant. And I'll try and do it visually and audio at the same time. But he wanted a scene where the dock master basically gets snapped up by the shark at night. And you'd see him on the dock and all is calm and the sun's going down and blah, blah, blah. And you would just see the mast of this sailboat just, and then the one next to it. And then the one next to that would start wiggling. So you'd trace. So even when he thought he'd have a mechanical shark, he had these ideas for how we would see the shark and know it was there without seeing it or experiencing it really at all. And it taking the roast out to sea, the dock breaking apart, the guy swimming back as the dock is chasing him in the water. Just a couple of wisecracky, whatever, non-entity characters, frankly. Just talk about characters that aren't given much to say of any value. It's still so tense. And
what?
I love that guy.
Yeah.
And I love that line reading. I'm right with you. It's almost effeminate the way he says it. Yeah. And the character isn't like that in the rest of the movie. So it really is an actor saying,
you want to put your head in there and you can see exactly how big it is. Yeah.
Yeah. It's almost like he just went for broke 100%, or they did 30 takes and this was the craziest, weirdest one that they kept. However it happened.
Yeah.
I love,
what? Well, yeah, it's so wonderfully mocking of the guy, you know,
but there's something else to it. There's an innocence to it when he says it. He immediately is back on him and mocking him, but for a moment he's like, huh?
So we have this amazing, wonderful movie of Jaws, giant hit. Massive summer blockbuster, the first massive summer blockbuster. And what do you do with massive summer blockbusters? You do
them again.
You do them
again
and again. So next time we are going to continue with our countdown of the top 5 Jaws movies.
With the second movie on our list.
With the second movie. No, we will get, this is...
Well, I was honestly wondering, Joel, when you said that you're going to go beat by beat, I'm like, there's no way we're going to be able to cover anything beyond the original.
That was always a possibility.
You never know.
You like to overplan and
but
what does Joel say? Said on-air production meeting, and it can all be fixed. Our audiences have seen those before. They're accustomed to them. We don't really even have time for a question. Maybe at the end of the sequels.
No, yeah, we'll save it. So we will continue our what's clearly going to be a month-long series. We should get through all of it, because there's
we won't break any of the sequels down shot by shot like we did this.
But Jaws is a special movie, and we're so happy that you the listener joined us, and obviously speaking for Ryan, Michael, we're so thrilled that you could join us to talk about this.
This is a great one to have you
And yeah, and
it'll be very fortunate to have you for the sequels too. You'll bring a lot of fun, dramatic tension to that wouldn't otherwise be there. So just to hype up the sequel show.
Yep. So again, yeah. So please join us next week as we continue our discussion of Jaws. Have a wonderful, see, by the time this airs, we will already have had.
This will be July 5th if you're watching this.
So I hope you all had a wonderful and safe Independence Day. And
we're going to have the best Independence Day we've ever had. The beaches will be open.
The beaches will be open. But maybe that should be our signature tagline sign off now, going, the beaches will be open, but for now, the show is closed.
Bye,
everybody.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
Oh, hey, no, I'm sorry. I'm a giant liar. Reach out to us at The Movie Show with Joel and Ryan page on Facebook, at Ask Joel and Ryan on Twitter and Instagram, at AskJoelAndRyan@gmail.com via email. So, all right. Thank you so much for joining us, and bye. Bye.
Thank you for listening to The Movie Show with Joel and Ryan. Remember, all views and opinions represented in this podcast are personal and belong solely to the speaker and do not represent those people, institutions, or organizations that the speaker may or may not be associated with, unless explicitly stated. None of these views and opinions were intended to malign or deceive. And now, here's the producers, circa 1982, to play us out.